Hey everybody, this is Love and Relo. I am your host, Ben Cross, and we have a very special edition today. We have author, speaker, Julie Kratz on, TEDx speaker, author of Lead Like an Ally. Very excited to have her on. Yesterday, if you tuned in, we actually had a book club where we read this book, and we had some really cool people, Ann Knapp, Elena Anderson-DeLay, Eddie Marks come on, and we all kind of talked about it. I was super cash, which is different for me. It's worth watching just to see me in a fitted hat. But today, actually, we get to talk to the author, Julie, who's come on, and she's going to kind of help us unpack some of these really cool concepts around allyship and how do we actually make this a reality in our workplace. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and thank our sponsor today. Our sponsor is Johnson Moving and Storage out of Denver, Colorado. Johnson's has pivoted to support healthcare supply chains across the country, delivering PPE and even ventilators to hospitals across the U.S. Johnson's has 12 locations across the Western U.S. and recently added Lisa Baranich to grow its international and government businesses. We appreciate their support and welcome them as a sponsor. They also supported Move for Hunger, which is why they got that sponsorship. So that's awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and bring out Julie, who has been waiting patiently in the back there for me. Hey, Julie, how's it going?
Hey, good. Good to be with you.
It is so wonderful to have you. Where in the world are you right now?
I am in my home office here in Central Indiana.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, we have an Indiana office too. So shout out to Indiana if you're watching there, everybody. And let's go ahead and see folks checking in. I see a bunch of people coming on Facebook. I see some folks here on LinkedIn. I'm going to go check this out, pull everybody up here. We're trying some new things here. If you noticed, everybody, we got a brand new logo, so we're feeling super fancy today. So check out the logo. Let me know what you think about that as well.
I for one, support it.
You support the logo. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We got a logo ally on the show today. So that's cool. Yeah, I'm going with the gold. It's kind of fancy, you know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Sandra Clary, looking forward to this today. Thank you, Sandra. Drew Phillips, hi, Ben. Happy Tuesday from sunny California. Let's see if we can get these comments up here. Sandra coming in here. Drew, looking forward to the show today. Love the Johnson's teddy bear. Yeah, always cool to take care of the kiddos. My dad's checking in. Awesome. Thanks, Dad. Love when Dad's on the show. Jamie Massler, hi, Ben and Julie. Cheers from sunny and windy Mississippi. Hey, everybody, if you're watching this right now, hit that like button, hit the heart button, show some love here, and let's hop into it. Yeah, there's Elena checking in. Elena's digging the logo. Now we got to get the jingle ready. Yeah, Elena was going to sing a jingle for us. That would be awesome. Yeah, it takes a village here on Love and Relo. So, Julie, thank you so much for coming to us here today live. Thank you so much for sponsoring our book club for May. Really enjoyed reading the book. I want to just kind of back it up here a little bit and kind of ask you about your story and how you got to this place where you made allyship kind of your, a goal or a career objective. Kind of how did this become something you really wanted to focus on?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I spent 12 years in corporate America, and I relocated quite a bit during those corporate years. And I never saw myself reflected really in the organization. So it was early 2000s. And I remember entering the workforce, and I was raised by a strong, feminist baby boomer mom, single mom. And she always said, women are, equal now, like we've taken care of this. The feminists have paved that way. And you get to the workforce and you're like, what the heck was she talking about? Let's not feel equal anymore. It's me and 10 dudes right from the get-go. And, I really was lucky that they were great, what I call now male allies. I didn't know what they were at the time. But there was weird stuff that happened over the course of those 12 years. And you don't know what to make of it when it's happening. Did they say that? Like, they didn't feel good to me, but I'm not going to make a fuss about it, because if I do, what's going to be said. There's really no good way to call somebody out. And I didn't have the tools. Like, and by the way, I was managing teams at the time, 23, managing a team of like 60 plus people.
Wow.
In a distribution center. And you're like on second shift, the lonely woman managing, and you could just see, some people would take you seriously. Others were like, I can get by with stuff.
Yeah.
It's just a real test of who you are and the kind of leader you are. So anyway, fast forward through all of those interesting collection of experiences, and the bottom, like the thread through those experiences was I enjoyed being a people leader, but I didn't have the tools to know how to do it. I didn't know how to be a coach or give good feedback or have a tough conversation that landed well. I just kind of figured it out and did some things well and did some things not so well. So that's when I started Next Pivot Point, my business 6 years ago, really to help people like me, and primarily women leaders that were wrestling with their own pivot points and what's next and what does this look like and how do I get from point A to point B, where male colleagues are just much more likely to self-promote and have that plan. And the work's pivoted into allyship because, after talking on stages and in countless organizations about women's leadership and the value of diversity and equality and all these great benefits that you can get, it really is the people in charge making decisions that we need involved, which kind of seems duh. But honestly, at the time I wrote my first book about allies, it was a non-conversation. It was just starting to bubble up about men as allies. And now, even just 3 years later, there's a lot of awareness around this. And that term is actually being used a lot. I know you've used the term really well, seamlessly in conversations, Ben. So I'm seeing that more and more. It's got me excited. But it really is based on my own corporate experiences, having had allies and not so allies, but also knowing at the end of the day, that's what we need to have real success. We're not going to get anywhere. 50% of the population will not solve 100% of the problem. Right. That's kind of where we're at. We're not solving the real problem without getting decision makers involved.
And I like it, and I like the fact that this book brings up awareness around allyship and that it's even a thing. And I got to tell you, before I read this book, I'm not sure that I really used it. It wasn't part of my vocabulary.
Yeah.
I think I fancied myself a advocate, maybe I would say.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I don't know that I called myself an ally. I still think I have work to do. Frankly, your book opened my eyes a lot around unconscious bias. And it kind of scared me a little bit. It kind of it was tough. Some parts of it were tough. Some parts I was right on. Some parts I was I felt convicted about, right? But I feel like that's kind of when you're in growth mode, is when you're kind of a little uncomfortable.
That's exactly right.
And I think we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. We say that in business all the time, be comfortable being uncomfortable when we talk about strategy and when we talk about growth initiatives, but we're not always quick to be comfortable being uncomfortable when it comes to inclusion, when it comes to issues of diversity, inclusion, allyship, things like that.
It's personal. It's really near and dear to who you are.
Yes, it's so personal. And yesterday on the show yesterday, when we had Ann Knapp on, she was kind of sharing her take on the book. She made that connection. She said, we always say, it's not personal, it's just business, right? And she's like, but when you discuss this topic in the context of business, it does become personal again. And how have you gosh, I'm sure you have you encountered that, and how do we work through some of those kind of uncomfortable moments?
Yeah, no, I like that. It's not personal. It is personal. It's very
kind of is, yeah.
Especially something like bias. I'm biased. What? There's something wrong with me. Right. Well, 95% of people are. So get over yourself. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I think to answer your question, Ben, it's really in the throes of discomfort that we learn and we grow. And to have a candid conversation about something that's personal, that's close to the vest, the best ways, I think what people really need are just conversation starters. And this is what I tried to do in the book, just give people that manager toolkit, the things to say, the things to do when things get tough. But I think we get emotionally connected. So if somebody says something that's jarring, we tend to either run away. It's fight or flight mode, run away or go head on. Either one goes well. So instead, just recognizing the behavior, this is an opportunity for me to grow and to be candid and help this person.
Yes.
And believe that they had good intention in what they were saying or doing. It just didn't land well. And I like just, practice kind of key openings of, hey, when you said that, what did you mean exactly? Or, hey, I know you meant well when you said that. Let me walk you through my thought process on that. It just getting comfortable with those things. And I got to tell you, I had a personal conversation with a grad school roommate last night that got real candid. And, I found myself getting very personal. Like, I do this for a living. I was like, this isn't helpful. Stop. You have to take yourself back and be like, okay, I value your perspective. I want to know more. Right. And just having some of those little slow down the rabbit hole, like slow down the conversation and have some of the go-to language. And when you feel yourself getting heated, kind of time out yourself.
Yeah.
And have some things to say kind of loaded in your back pocket.
I love it. And you talked about a couple of things like assuming good intent, which I think I want to talk about too, because I think that that's a great place to start any of these journeys. Let's go ahead and real quick. And I want to give some more shout outs to people checking in here. Anne, looking forward to today's chat. She was on the show yesterday. Thanks, Anne. Lisa Ross, new logo's pretty bougie. Yeah, we keep it a little bougie, tastefully bougie. Is that a thing? I don't even know.
I don't even know how to spell bougie. Now I know.
Well, I think bougie has a G in it, if it's bourgeois, but you know what?
If it's the French way.
From the French bourgeois. Hosea Botley, looking forward to the show from dark and cloudy Seattle. Awesome, Jose. Looking forward to having you on, I think, June 4th. So stay tuned for that. Christy Saluga, happy Tuesday. What feels like a Monday. Yeah, it does feel like a Monday. It feels like a Monday, but maybe this week is a 5-day week with no Wednesday. Happy Tuesday. What feels like a Monday. Looking forward to the conversation. Hey, Christy, I think you might have read the book. Hey, if you're watching this right now and first of all, leave a like and a heart. Okay. Love to see that, but also leave a question, because I really want to engage all out there. And I know this is a sticky wicket of a topic. It's a topic that a lot of people feel passionate about. Please leave your questions. Julie's an expert. She's worked through these things before, and I would love us to leave practical knowledge on this. Even if you're not going to
offend anybody, I promise. I
can't guarantee you're not going to offend anybody, but we're really going to assume positive intent.
You're not going to offend me.
There you go. If you offend me, you've really done it. I tell you what. Lynn Greenberg, hi, Ben and Julie. Lynn in New York City. Daniel Cunningham Jr., truth and transparency, the ability to communicate deeply in any relationship is key. Namaskar. Mena Elsfori, hello from Dubai. Hey, Mena. Good to see you. Katie Linehan, been looking forward to this hour. Book was a great read. Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, leave your comments below. Love to incorporate them. Let's talk. So we talked about assuming positive intent, and that's kind of the way I want to set the table also, for this conversation, right? So, and it's something that I work on in my life, not just in terms of allyship, but just, especially when reading email. Can we just when you read an email, you have to, when you're not actually seeing the person's face, hearing their voice, and you just get 10% of communication, right? When you just get this little tiny snippet, assuming positive intent has done wonders for my career, just in terms of reading email. What does it bring to this conversation?
Yeah, no, really good point. This is something, gosh, I learned early in my coaching certification, and it was so helpful for me with conflict in times when I would get emotionally invested in something, because I can, and a lot of women do, but emotional intelligence is a human thing. So yeah, I think right now, especially in a virtual world, between texting, like you said, emailing, Slack channels, and we have so many different ways of communicating without body language. And we can go real quick to the negative intent of they're trying to ruin my day. Why are they evil?
Yeah.
And it's not. The intervention strategy for when your alarm bells are going off in your brain and you think someone is a troll and just the worst person ever.
Right.
Just ask yourself, assuming they had good intentions, assuming they were coming from a good place instead of this horrible place I'm thinking, what might those be? And it just elicits, it turns back on your rational brain, and it gets you to think, reframe it positively, and to be curious about them as a good human instead of a bad enemy. And that mechanism alone is going to help you explore possibilities. And it also helps you kind of reframe and even ask that person that question. With email in particular, one thing I've practiced, if I just go in hot, just really pound it, keys are getting pounded. It's like steam that's coming out of my ears, right?
Yep.
And just, I like time out myself. Okay. Did that you feel better now? Like, did you get that out? Okay, let's save that one as a draft and revisit it later. And just an hour later, you're like, oh my dear, wow, that was really going to not go well.
Yeah.
Because you know what it's like to get in an email war with somebody or a text war. It just doesn't go anywhere. And then you lose sleep at night, and then you have to do apologizing and compromising and slow down the cascade. And that's a gift that we're given in this virtual world. We've slowed down. We're not moving as fast as we did. Our days aren't as packed. I mean, not for everybody, right? Of course, essential workers and, all the people I'm so thankful for that are very busy, that's not the case. But for a lot of us that are working virtually, slow it down, take time to pause, practice believing in positive intent with people. And just the last thing I'd say on that too, is just proactively getting that mindset. I think so many people know about the techniques that they should be doing, right? Meditation, yoga, mindfulness, also all these words fly around. And some people don't know that they should do these things. They just don't do them. Right? Because you got other stuff to do.
Right. We know we're supposed to do it, but we just don't do it.
Right. And then you get down the rabbit hole a lot easier. You go down that negative self-talk, negative assumptions. So bookends to your day. Proactively building bookends to your day to start positively. Like, the world is a good place. People I talk to today are going to be good people.
Right.
People are good humans. Just reminding yourself at the beginning, and then the end of the day, practicing some gratitude. Like, what are 3 things I'm super grateful I got to do today? My 6-year-old daughter is excellent at doing that at family dinner. And that's been a gift of this whole thing, is we have family dinner every night. And her question, it's like bite 2. You got to be thankful for something good that happened that day. So just finding ways to program positive intent in a world that's, quite honestly, filled with negative. And jar that primes our brain to go negative. So just watching how you frame your day.
Yeah, and I think, we say in a world that's filled with negative, but it's almost like channels. What are we taking in? Is the world filled with negative, or is it filled with positive, or is it filled with what we choose to see it filled with? And what are we ingesting, right? And oftentimes, what we ingest, we also ingest what we say is also what we hear. Yeah. So us talking ourselves into a right mindset, I think, is important. Cliff Bierman says, I'll ask myself what else is happening in this person's day to make them respond this way? And is my response going to make things better or worse?
That's good.
Yeah, for sure.
Might be something else going on there. Maybe it's not all about me.
And it rarely is.
Right.
Like, literally rarely is. I was a terror yesterday, and I realized after I got 9 hours of sleep last night, it was because I was sleep deprived. And it wasn't anything that my family was doing. It was me. Yep. I was wrong. I was just not mentally there. Eddie Mark says, what is the best way to approach an offender while keeping the conversation productive and not defensive?
Yeah, I think so. Defensive-ness, blame game, excuses can happen. And a lot of that has to do with your approach. I think accepting that and owning that, rather than be like, see how difficult they are. Because I would say, to echo what you said earlier, if you go in with the assumption of negative intent, that they're awful and you'll find it. You'll find evidence to support whatever you're thinking. So if you go into the conversation with like, I'm going to find a good reason here, I'm going to find common ground here, you'll find it.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's just mindset and what you choose, the intention you choose, and the expectation you set in the conversation. So an offender, I'm curious, I'm assuming some bad behavior. I'm going to make that assumption.
Yeah.
And depending on the offense, there might be a different approach. But maybe let's assume one from the book. They're called microaggressions. So subtle, little, everyday actions that just send signals to people that are different, that they don't belong. And for women in the workplace, it's interruptions. It's taking credit for ideas. It's not inviting us to the social meeting. It's assuming that they somehow don't care about work because they have children, things like this. They may not seem small. They may seem small rather, but they're big over time, especially if they happen like 10 times in one day. Like I know I experienced that. And so if somebody says something unhelpful, an interruption, takes an idea that was shared earlier by a woman, whatever it is, I just like to oftentimes pull that person aside one-on-one, because usually public, unless you have really good trust and everyone in that room, virtual probably room right now, has a good level of trust, it's probably not going to go well. It's probably going to go sideways. Pull them aside one-on-one and just say, hey, I want to talk to you about something. And I often share, this is hard. Like, I want to talk to you about something that's hard for me. But I'm sharing it with you because I care about you. So it's like challenging with care, finding that balance of I care about you and I want to share something that's hard. When you said this, one of the things in the book that I think is helpful is the situation behavior impact model of feedback. I've used this so many times over the years. I wish I'd had it 20 years ago when I was in corporate America, because I found myself hem-hauling, like, you kind of sort of do this sometimes. People are like, what is she talking about? Be clear. Brene Brown says to be clear is to be kind. It is kind to be clear with people. When you said this, when you did this, the impression it created was this. The perception of that behavior was this. Let's talk about how it could look differently next time. I mean, that's like a 2-minute intro and then just have a back and forth.
Right.
And then most of the time when we approach an offender, we spend like 45 minutes, beating them over the head with stuff, and they leave A, confused, B, mad, and probably more likely to do that than they were before.
That's such great coaching, though. I mean, I feel like that should be like requisite coaching for all, new managers or new leaders in the workplace, is just how to deliver that clear, concise feedback that, I like that a lot. I think great point. We got a few other people coming in here. Orlando from Mexico. Hola.
Wow, I didn't realize there's such an international audience. I love diverse audiences.
We are just getting started. And I just got a clarification on bougie. It is in the Urban Dictionary if anybody would like to pursue that rabbit hole. I've spent some time, fair share of my life on the Urban Dictionary. Mark Moose checking in from Switzerland. He says, take a short walk down the office hallway before you start hammering the keyboard. Yeah, get that kinetic energy out in other ways.
Well, I can see emotional energy because your heart is pumping blood because it thinks it's going to fight something or run from something. It assumes kind of that primal fear of life or death situation, fight or flight. So burning off the energy, a walk, right? Running in place, whatever you can do. I walk when I'm on the phone with people in hard conversations for that exact reason. Yeah.
Let's see here. Brent, loving the outfit. Hey, thank you, Brent. I appreciate you. Let's see here. Jamie says, I have a bad habit of reading an email, and it seems like it has 2 separate meanings depending on the way I read it. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Print out an email, hand it to 5 people, ask them to read it, and hear the different voices you hear. Oh, hilarious. One comment can change the whole dynamic. Oh, man. If the way we respond is riding on the use of a comma, oh, gosh, our society is doomed. It normally turns out innocent, and I have learned to not react immediately, but respond after a few minutes with clarity.
Yeah. 2 minutes just buys you some time to think more clearly.
Just to breathe. Janet's loving the Brene Brown quote, clear is kind, unclear is not kind. Shout out to Tanya Maratini, who sent me, I think it was Daring Greatly. The chapter on men and shame changed my life.
Oh, that word is so heavy. I still struggle with the word shame. She is brilliant. And if anyone that hasn't seen, if you haven't gotten through all your Netflix stuff yet, Brene Brown's Netflix special is awesome.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Came out a year ago, so I'm assuming it's still up there. It was so good that you like all our stuff, you kind of need a box of tissues if you're like me. It's so good.
I want to get to a relocation tie-in here, okay? Because our community is mostly relocation and global mobility focused, and I want to, hey, Lena from Sweden, former guest. I want to tie this in with relocation. So yesterday we had on the show Elena Anderson DeLay, co-founder, lead strategist at eSolutions. She's been on the program a couple times before. She is one of my allies in this journey. just shouting out Elena there. I don't know if she wants me to say that or not, but she is. She's one of the people that opened my eyes actually around this topic. And so I appreciate her so much. She brought up a great relocation tie-in and actually cited an article in Mobility Magazine, our trade publication.
Nice.
It was actually the cover article on inclusion and diversity. And shout out to the folks who wrote it.
That's cool.
Yeah, right. Mark Burrows and Allison Shipatovsky. And it was kind of like the business case for mobility, but it was also the business case for mobility, the business case for diversity and inclusion, and the business case for diversity and inclusion in relocation assignments. And what she says is research in our industry reveals that women are being placed on global assignments far less than men, and global assignments are often a pathway to an executive role. How can global mobility professionals be better allies and move the needle on this issue?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's riddled with gender bias. It's called benevolent sexism. So it especially affects women at the childbearing years. So it's important to note you don't have to have a child or even be the primary caregiver to be impacted by this. And it's not fair, but 68% of primary caregivers are women. So it is backed up with actual data. And what people tend to do, I'd say from late 20s, even mid 20s, it kind of depends on where in the country world you are, to 40, mid 40s, when your kids are young, for sure. She doesn't want to relocate. She's got young kids. She doesn't want to uproot her family. She doesn't want that promotion. She's got so much going on. How does she could possibly do this all? So flip it to test it that we reference in the book. Kristen Pressner's work is so foundational and helpful for this. It's just someone who says something like that. The best challenge is, well, if she was a man, would you say that same thing? Or certainly she knows she has children. Like, let's not let her make the decision.
And I think that's what Jane in the book said. Well, have you asked her?
Right.
And then the answer is like, well, I guess I haven't asked her.
It's like a light bulb moment for people. Well, I didn't even think to, because good intentions, they don't even want to put her in the position of asking because they don't want to make her like have to choose. But by doing that and not doing that to men, that's doing a disservice for women in their careers. So if we continue to have the motherhood penalty, it's a form of gender bias. It's the most prevalent. I myself find myself, if I see a successful woman executive that has children, the first thought in my brain is like, no way, she's doing everything well. Like she's got to be doing something, because that's the narrative of society. I mean, there's so many terrible movies that reinforce that narrative too. It's horrible. So even it affects me. And when I go into just the rooms, I assume men are decision makers. It's terrible. I have my own biases I'm constantly working on. But from a relocation perspective, I mean, I remember being relocated a lot in my corporate career those first 4 years. And then it's kind of like puts the brakes on after that.
So you were relocated a lot and it seems like it did things for your career. Yeah. How did you avoid maybe some of that trap that you described?
I was young, so I wasn't up against the motherhood penalty yet. I was too young, everything was still equal. But I'll say I was 26. I think I was 26 when it first happened that a CEO, I'm not kidding, this happened at a big company. A CEO I had a chance to meet with over lunch, which is a real privilege. In the course of the conversation said, hey, it's going to be hard for you in the childbearing years, especially because we have trouble promoting women in the childbearing years. I remember being like, why is this information being shared with me? Why do I need to know this?
I feel like any sentence that contains the word childbearing years is automatically flawed.
Right. And I'm like, am I some sort of, delivery mechanism for children? It just felt all sorts of strange. And I still remember, it was 12 years ago, and I remember it vividly. And I remember leaving that meeting, and it wasn't just me, it was a handful of other people. And the other woman in the meeting was like, this is wrong. And she, ran it up oh gosh, it ruined that whole summer. It was just constant. We had to meet with them again. And I just remember being like, what did you mean when you said that then? If you didn't mean anything by it, what did you mean exactly? Well, I was just trying to be helpful. And this is the thing. It's benevolent sexism. He believed he was trying to be helpful and give us fair warning. but he was admitting basically that gender bias was okay. And so his was conscious bias, not unconscious. Most of it's unconscious, but I think most male CEOs actually think that. If you asked him over a beer, candidly, if you asked them, not me, but if you asked them because you're a man, they would probably be like, well, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of that does come out, and I think that, oh gosh, I mean, I think, and this is another area where I was convicted on so many levels in this book. And one of the areas I was convicted in was being a bystander, right? Being, things being said in my presence, whether in regards to women or people of different races or whatever, and just not saying anything and not correcting and not taking that learning opportunity or squandering that learning opportunity. And I think back and I can count them, and it's just, have you seen that done well? Can you give me some tips?
Well, I appreciate your vulnerability with that. You're not alone. I would say if you told me you hadn't, I wouldn't believe you.
Right.
Because we've all done it. I've done it. Like, ooh, that was awkward. I want to get out of here. We just want it to go away. And it doesn't go away, especially if you don't say anything. So I think first and foremost, any behavior change requires some pain. And so asking yourself the question, when I often say for bystanders, is if you don't say anything or do anything, you're okay with it happening again. So if you're okay with that, like, great strategy, don't do anything. But you know the definition of insanity.
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Like, oh, certainly they'll learn their lesson. Oh, people are changing here. I hear all sorts of placating excuses. Like, no, they're not going to change unless they're forced to change. And as an ally, I can't be a bystander. And a better language is upstander. Be an upstander. And so again, I think this is, a lot of the questions, it feels like it's just, again, how to have this candid, uncomfortable conversation. And if that's really hard for you and it's somebody you don't have a good relationship with, it's going to be harder. Try building trust with them first. One of the things to do, one of my favorite things to do lately, it's been hard for me, is I'm on a lot of male podcasts, white male podcasts, which they don't.
Julie, I appreciate you doing your 8th white male podcast this week.
Well, it's sad how much I'm on women's ones, and 80% of podcasts are hosted by men. Shocker. And I myself wasn't really asking to be on them. They weren't asking me. And so I was kind of like fulfilling this whole thing. And so I've been on a few lately, and that you could tell I'm used to talking about this stuff. And it's an opportunity, right? And so a couple comments have been exchanged, good intention comments. And I usually just say, hey, there's a podcast you might want to check out about race, or, hey, I've noticed a lot of your guests are white men. Like, it's a chance to diversify. Would you be open to being introduced to some women of color or some, different types of people with different backgrounds? Sure. And that's kind of a safer way to open the door versus being like, all right, dude, you need to check yourself.
Would you be open to checking this out? I like that.
Yeah. Would you be open to this? Would you be open to checking something out in a book, a podcast? So I just keep like a running list of things that send people, just little things. And I don't have to do the education, because I will say it's exhausting if you find yourself policing and being the upstander every time. You'll get exhausted. It's called compassion fatigue. Like, you run out of energy because you're having to do all the hard work and put on the rescue cape and save the day. And that's really not helpful. People need to figure it out on their own. Just kind of pepper them with little messages, little content along the way.
I like it, because I envision the conversation going like, you're a jerk. And then I envision the rest of my life with them not in it. And I realize how unsustainable that is, because I have no friends. I can
my bubble of people, and I only hang out with them.
Yeah, exactly. I only hang out with 2 people. Elena says, thanks, Julie, for defining benevolent sexism. It hurts so many organizations and industries. As the saying goes, good intentions pave the road to hell.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that's something people struggle with. I learned that in my unconscious bias certification. It's like, okay, that makes a lot more sense, because especially with women, since women are caregivers, of course I think in people's mind, like, of course that's more important than their job. But the question becomes, why is motherhood so overvalued in comparison to fatherhood? I mean,
right.
I don't
You would
understand.
never, yeah. You would never look at that guy and say, I don't know if I can relocate him. He's got an 8 and 11-year-old and a 2-year and a baby on the way. I don't think I could relocate. You wouldn't say that about the man. You would never.
No. No, and you're making a lot of assumptions in that statement that he's the primary breadwinner, that he's the provider, that she somehow is, her job is not as important, her family, it puts a lot on women. And I remember an exact moment of this happening to me. I used to travel a lot before all this. Be on airplanes. And, it was always funny when you got the free upgrade to first class. It was like me and a whole bunch of white guys. And
Oh, gosh. It's so white in first class.
like a sea of people, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be fun. I'd sit down and you do the back and forth. What do you do? And I mean, just
how did you get here?
look at me like, what? You do that for a living? And then, without question, 1 in 3, I would say something like, you travel and you have a small child. Isn't that hard for you?
Mm-hmm.
And, after the first few times, it's like, this is really, yes, it is hard for me. Your judgment.
Your judgment makes it worse.
In my earphones to be done. But that's not a sustainable strategy, to your point, because that person needs education. For me, I just basically told him how he thinks is right. See this mean person sitting next to me. See, she's what's wrong with everything, right?
Right.
I just really justified his own thinking. I didn't help change it. Not that it's my job to change everybody. Sometimes at the end of the day, I don't have the energy, but there's a better way to handle that situation.
Yeah, interesting. Brian Limperopoulos says, courageous statement, Ben, not easy to admit. Thank you, Brian. I could make a lot more courageous statements about this book, honestly, some of the things it's shown me, and I hope to get to some of those as well. Because I think that it was difficult, Brian goes on to say we have a responsibility and a duty to stand up for disenfranchised groups. Because I came into the book, and then down below here is a link to Julie's company site there, nextpivotpoint.com. Lead Like an Ally. So go check out Julie. But I came into this book, and I came in saying, I want to be an ally. I want to be a change maker in my world, whatever that is, as big and small as that may be. And I feel I'm there. I'm like, I'm ready. I want to do this. I came in, and as I read the book, there were aspects of Jane's story that had happened to me. People told me to be patient when I was a young manager. People told me that I was too disruptive and spoke out too much and got too emotional. People told me a lot of things that I've read there. And I'm like, wow, I identified with that when I was 26 and having a team of 23 people and, whatever. And people to this day ask me how do I do it all? Right. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, how much of this is because she's a woman, and how much of this is because she's a high potential person of any sort? I guess, I don't know, that was just one of my takes. And it made me feel, kind of defensive, because I was kind of like, I felt like I was part of the problem.
It's happened to me too. Yeah.
I felt like I was part of the problem. And then I wear my fancy suits to work, and I'm like, well, am I making other people in the office feel bad about not wearing suits to work? I hope not, because I don't think nobody in my office dresses like me, so I think I'm the only one. So it just made me, these were moments that I had. I was reading the book where I was like, I hope I'm not part of the problem. I probably am. How do I fix it? How do I reconcile these feelings?
Yeah. Well, it reminds me so much. I mean, and I appreciate that. That's really candid and real. And I think giving ourselves some grace to everyone's a part of the problem and everyone's part of the solution. So yes, there is truth to that. But there are so many things you can do to be helpful. And I think, to your point about the intersectionality of the experience too, Jane's experience isn't just what a white woman experiences. Yeah, young people experience it too. People of color experience it too. So yeah, any dimension of difference that's different than the majority group or the decision-making powers that be, you feel some of that. So I think that makes it relatable, the story, to you.
Yeah.
But it's really, I think the more you identify with what I call the majority group, whether that's white, for racial identification, male as a gender identification, straight for sexual orientation, able-bodied, the list goes on. But those are kind of the big four. The more that you have an opportunity to be an ally, and yeah, you're not personally contributing to the problem, but the system is built for you. And I think just recognizing that, like, the system has been built largely by white men, and therefore it kind of does benefit me. And when you take that lens on things, I'm like, well, but it's not that I haven't worked hard to get where I am, right? It's nothing to do with that. This is a chance to be an ally. This is a chance to be helpful. I can help people that are different. So it's just flipping that script. The word privilege it's just like the word feminism. It's been so polarizing over time, but the more privileges you have, the more opportunities you have to help. Like, that's a really positive thing.
That's the way I like to look at it. I like to look at it as I have privilege to use that privilege for the good of others, to grant those privileges, hopefully, as well. So thank you for putting
it perfect. And no one's doing it perfect. So you're going to screw up some days and just owning it, right? It's like, that didn't go so well. That's okay.
Let's see. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the one quote I'd love to share with people is, if we are waiting for perfect allies, we will wait forever. Like, be patient, accept people's faults. Just because they make one step out of bounds does not mean they're a bad person. Like, they might just need some coaching, some bring them into the conversation instead of shaming them.
And I love that. I love the fact you said two things just now, or, in the course of this conversation, that I think is helpful for, the men out there, right? Who don't always feel included in these movements, right? But who are necessary, to your point, right? One is that, we're not perfect, like you just said, and understand that everybody has bias. Yeah. 90, or you said 95% of people have bias. So as we start to admit that we are all kind of flawed in the way that we see others, and just the way that we read email, I think, is a perfect example that everyone can relate to, right? I think that once we understand that everyone is biased and everyone has flaws, and now we can start to to examine these blind spots without stigma, and without saying you're evil because you have a bias. Like, well, okay, hold on, we're all biased. Let's just admit what they are. Now we can unpack them. We can work through them, and we can, you know what I mean? And I think that's where we need to get to, because I think that as a white male, as a cisgendered white male, which is a new term for me, but I'm learning all sorts of things. This is great. But I feel like the topics of race and gender can be very loaded topics. That scare me, because they could turn on me pretty quickly. So, it's a scary thing for me,
Oh, I get it.
But I think I think it's a safer place to be when we say, hey, we all possess biases. Let's work through these together. None of us are perfect. If somebody sets the table with that for me, I can trust more, I think.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because even now, you think at a time when we can come together, there's so many divides again. It's just, we're constantly fighting these divisions. And I think the white guy, it's, on one hand, women and people of color will tell you, like, seriously, I'm supposed to feel sorry for them.
I know. I get that.
You're
too.
really frustrated. Like, seriously, I have to make it easier for them. Now we need them again.
Or white guy.
But then I think to acknowledge the real fear of, think about the things that have probably been very shameful and hurtful that have been said to this man over the years. We haven't been very kind. I mean, feminism was associated with man-hating. Like, that's something very common. And I'm a feminist, and I can admit that was a connotation that people would tell me frequently respond that way. So Black Lives Matter jars white people, it's just, it feels like it's one or the other, and it just doesn't have to be. And I think if we can create psychologically safe places for our white allies, for our men as allies to come in and learn. I mean, just like you said, I'm learning so much. I mean, isn't that kind of fun? Like, I learned the word cisgender. I didn't know it before. Like, I'm a better human, a better person, right? Like, I have learned, I have grown. I have a family that I want this for. Like, these kind of things. When I started doing my work on allyship and race, it was really uncomfortable and hard at first, being the only white person in spaces. I mean, that's hard. And then you're
That's
like,
how Black people feel every day of their life. That's
exactly.
what's crazy to me.
And then like trading notes about hair touching and the conversations you have to have with your children that I don't have to have, policing strategies. These are real things that affect people of color that don't affect me. I don't have to do those things. And so then once you get, sorry, I even get chills thinking about it now. Oh, wow. I have such an opportunity to grow and learn. Wow. I can be so helpful and strive to be an ally in that space. So same thing for men. Like, of course it's uncomfortable. You'd be doing it already if it was easy.
I love what you just said is the whole reason I wanted to have this conversation, because I feel like there's so much opportunity for reconciliation when like, I just love what you said there. I just thank you for saying it.
Oh, thank you.
I got a couple of more questions. I want to get to all these questions. We got comments coming in over here left and right. So thank you, everybody. If you haven't hit that heart button, hit it. Hit that like button on Facebook. I want to get through all these questions, so I'm just going to get through them kind of quickly. Elena, what's up? I got you too. Hosea, it took me a while, but I learned the military leadership approach does not work very well in the corporate world.
Chain of command.
Huge adjustment for me. Yeah. Hosea is still trying to get me show 15 minutes.
Short term, it might work. Long term.
Anything works short term. It's just at the end of the day, you're going to get a resignation notice. Amanda Rakovsky, hi from Phoenix. Hey, Amanda. Brian, thank you. Let's see here. Let's go down here. Francine, hi, Ben and Julie. Love listening to your narrate your own book. Thank you for sharing your experiences and insights.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening.
So Jane in the book, loved the story, loved the arc, loved the growth at each phase of the career. How autobiographical was that for you?
Yeah, it's funny, the feedback I get when men read it is, did this just happen to you? Is this a real thing? No, it's really, honestly, I was inspired maybe a year and a half ago. Like the countless times that women come up to me after I speak and share that story, like parts of that story with me. Like, you just described what it was like for me last year when I wanted a promotion. That happened to me too. Did you know that happened to me? Some sort of mind reader. Like, no, it just happens that often. It's sad how prevalent these experiences are. So no, I mean, honestly, some of the things happened to me. A lot of them didn't. A lot of them were just the treasure trove of stories that people have shared with me over the years. And so I think that's so helpful though to people that feel marginalized, that this isn't just happening to me. This is something that's very much more likely to happen because I identify this way.
Yeah.
And then it's not about you anymore. It's really about the system and how we help each other navigate the system. And until honestly, if you want to be like really think big, like how do you change the system? We don't have enough time to get on that topic, but that's really where things need to go.
Well, but I think you're changing the attitudes of the people, and the people build the system. I mean, I think we can change the world around us by changing one mind at a time and encouraging them to change others. And I think that's one of the big scary goals of my program, is to try to impact people and change hearts and minds so that we can then go out and be change makers in the world. Right. So
lead by influence.
There you go. Francine says, I relived some experiences through listening and was encouraged by your thought process and growth achievements. Yeah, cool. Amanda Rakowski says, great point about fatherhood. Yeah. Let's see here. Katie goes on. I was asked many times, well, who was caring for your 3 children? She travels a lot. After 15 years, I gave up and started saying we have the best dog ever.
Teach him to say that again.
Oh gosh, it's funny. Amanda shares the experience, kind of to your point earlier, right? Katie Linehan saying, my husband is a firefighter, so we have great balance with having one parent home. The question that we got was the follow-up questions from a man on a plane. Who cleans while you're gone? I had to keep my mouth shut. Oh my gosh, that's so Vinny, cheer.
But the data backs this up. Women on average do 6 hours a week more than their male counterparts in a traditional gender partnership in the home. So most women do fulfill those roles. Most men fulfill the other roles. So it is representative of the experience. And again, so when people question it, it just reinforces that narrative.
We got a great question here for you from Anne, who was on yesterday. Shout out to Anne. Anne says, Jane's journey, Jane's the protagonist in the book, Jane's journey had her working in very large companies. For those that work for smaller companies, like less than 100 employees with less resources, employees are already wearing several different hats, already stretched thin. How do you think the journey would be different? How about when working for a small family-owned company? I think a lot of people are in that same position that are watching, probably a lot of small companies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the owners, and if it's a family-owned company. Yep, been there, done that. Totally understand. Actually, her first corporate experience was meant to be smaller, but I don't think it came across in the book. Because I thought about that. I was like, no, that was supposed to be a small consulting company. But anyway, you're right. You're right. I think these challenges are real and absolutely able to be overcome. So I would say, rather than think, corporate hierarchy structure, senior leadership team, you're probably talking owner, family, a handful of people, maybe some shareholders, whatever that looks like. Getting them on board is really the same conversations about the business case and the human case for it. What are we missing out on? FOMO is a great motivator. So you don't have to have, a structured employee resource group like she experienced in the book, but have some focus on it. I mean, we probably could be doing better. And the fundamental question I'd ask in a small business is, who do we want to be working with? What kind of clients do we want to be attracting? What kind of people do we want to do business with? How are we mirroring that in our organization? Do we look like those people? Do we act like those people? Do we behave like those people? Okay, if not, we got some work to do. So what does that look like? How do we get creative with how we recruit, how we hire? Look at that whole employee experience chapter, I think, can really help navigate some of that too, regardless of the size of the organization. But that leadership, that owner is really pivotal, because if you don't have their buy-in, it's not going to go anywhere.
And even when you have their buy-in kind of on paper, right? Like, so I look at the last chapter, right? When they hired the chief DI officer, right? Diversity inclusion officer. Jane gets there and she does all these cool things. And then like, it gets to a point where he's kind of like, that's not happening, or I don't want to hear about it. And, I think that's common. I think people say we need diversity, inclusion, senior executive,
but I don't want to hear about any of the problems.
Yeah, make them go. I hired you to make them go away, so we don't have the problems. Don't bring them up to the surface.
Organization. And if you talk to D&I people, they'll tell you that's how it really is. They're on an island. No one trusts them. Everyone's afraid they're going to get in trouble, and they're one person trying to change a whole organization culture. It's impossible.
And the people they're trying to change don't report up to them, so they can't. I mean, it's hard to issue directives. You have to work cross-functionally. So yeah, I can imagine it's challenging. But I also see the CEO standpoint, because it's like, okay, you're going to go dig up all these moments that are terrible, and you're going to ask people to talk more about them. This sounds like lawsuits waiting to happen.
Yeah.
This sounds like hundreds of millions of dollars of lawsuits. This sounds like people boycotting our product. This sounds like death. Basically.
Trouble. Steer clear.
Worst case scenario.
Isn't that telling, though, that we think we have a choice? So it's saying, I don't have to deal with this. And that is privilege.
Well, that is the whole thing we talked about before about being an upstander. It's like, if I don't acknowledge this, maybe it goes away. That's what I think people think. But here we are with Twitter, with the internet, right? Our customers have megaphones, but so do our employees, Glassdoor, all sorts of outlets. Yeah. And you have to get in front of these things and fix it before it fixes you. And you have to make sure that you have a workplace where people feel comfortable. And then that's the fear aspect. What I loved also in that chapter that you talk about, that you write in the book, is a business case for DI that I had not heard before, which is, and it's obvious now, but so I feel silly saying this, but when the firm became the employer of choice in New York City, and everybody wanted to work there. Imagine having a company. You run a company. Imagine having a company that everybody wants to work for. You get to pick all the all-stars and say, "Come work for us," because, what a beautiful position would that be?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, you're talking about maximizing employee engagement, the turnover's down, productivity's up, quality's up, client satisfaction. Yeah. I mean, and it's hard to isolate and measure. That's why I think it's hard to it's easy to get by doing things status quo if it's working. But Gen Z, I mean, everyone keeps looking at the next generation to change things. I'm telling you, Gen Z, millennials thought it was a nice thing to have this inclusion thing. right? Gen X is too busy just making the baby boomers happy to like really raise the stink. But millennials are like, this is nice to have. And we're like, you entitled millennial. Now, Gen Z coming into the workforce now. I mean, the data showing Pew Research Center studied this. They will not work for organizations that aren't good and ethical and truly walking the talk with this stuff. So you are in trouble. If you're having trouble motivating millennials, good luck with Gen Z.
They won't even engage.
No, they won't even, there's no way they'd work for you.
Right. You mentioned metrics. So this brings me to one of my last questions here from the group from yesterday. And it was from Eddie. And Eddie says, what metrics are monitored in order to rate success or progress on diversity and inclusion? Thank you for including me. Oh, thanks for including me yesterday. That was not part of the question. But what metrics are monitored in order to rate success and progress on diversity and inclusion?
I like scorecards. To isolate it to just a couple of variables doesn't really do justice to the whole story. It's a little more complicated. But that employee experience, in one of the chapters at the end, Jane measures it, right? So a lot of organizations like to focus on recruiting. Well, that's D without I. That's diversity without inclusion. It's not going to work. So not just recruiting, but hiring to performance management. And that's where the data can get really interesting. So what are numbers for recruiting? What are numbers for hiring? And you can slice and dice it by race and gender easily. Go deeper than that if you can. But then promotion data. It's 2/3 male nationally. So you probably look like that. So that's a huge telling sign of whose behavior do we reward here? Who do we want more of here? Performance management, same thing. So if you can get some data around that, and then exit data, separation data shows 2 to 3x higher rate by non-majority groups exiting organizations. So the data is there. If you have an HR system that's decent, you can capture it. But a lot of people are like, no, we don't have that information. Wish we did. You just don't want to know. Like, it's there. It's not hard to capture. And more importantly, depending on the size of your organization, capture it at a leader level. Like, have the manager actually be responsible for that data. And you want to change behavior, start measuring it. Ooh.
So would you recommend, like, going back to the small company, the small company challenge, would you recommend just like, quarterly surveys of folks to ask them about how they're feeling? And,
I think perception changes is fair too. That's more of a leading indicator. I've got a free D&I assessment on my website, nextpivotpoint.com/assessment. It's 20 questions. If you already do an employee engagement sort of pulse check, that's pretty commonplace nowadays, even for small companies. But get people's perceptions around inclusion. How inclusive are we? What opportunities could we be having? And really listen. And take that pulse check. Yeah, quarterly is great. And for a company, 10 plus, you can capture that and still keep it anonymous. So I think it's important. And I get pushback. Like, I don't know if I can ask those questions. Just because you've asked the question doesn't mean it's going to change people's opinions. They still had those perceptions. Wouldn't you rather know than not know?
Yeah. What was the name of that? Bias checker? What was the website? It was nextpivotpoint.com/.
Oh, just backslash on my website to assessment.
How many S's are in assessment? Are there 4?
2 S's twice, right? That's why it's confusing.
Thank you. That's what I was. All right, we're gonna roll with this as we're doing this.
Yeah, you got it. Oh yeah, good. You got it. Yeah.
TV here. Okay, wonderful. And then you know what? Here's my last question, actually. Unless anybody has any other wonderful questions, the questions have been phenomenal. Love you guys hanging in there till the end here too. Got a bunch of people on LinkedIn, a bunch of people on Facebook and YouTube. Elena had another question for me. Has allyship for one marginal group created issues with another marginalized group?
Yeah, the good old tug of war. Yeah, and this is a divide and conquer strategy. And it's back to the system things. It's not that the majority group's doing this on purpose. But the age-old argument has been women of color. If you look at feminism, it's very white. A lot of people don't know the 1920s women's suffrage movement. So we're on the 100th anniversary of that, by the way. This year was for white women. Black women did not get the right to vote in 1920. And a lot of people don't know that. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Amendment in 1964 that Black women actually got the right to vote. So There has
Wow.
been a divide and conquer strategy. Because, right, I mean, think about it. If you're the majority group, we'll keep the women separate, keep the people of color separate, make them separate issues.
Right.
But it's been so interesting as you compare notes. It's not the same experience, but it is. The microaggressions aren't that different. The behaviors aren't that different. Like the little things that you're told aren't very different from a gender and people of color. Of course, the lived experience is different. I don't want to marginalize that. But it's true. I mean, and this is really a chance for intersectionality. Like we are stronger together. This is why there's a big debate in the women's space. I get pushback from people, gender first, gender first. Like, at what cost? Like, why? Like, if you're a woman of color, how the heck do you separate those two experiences? You can't. They're two of your identities simultaneous.
Right.
So I think gender can be a springboard to some of the other ones because gender is 50-ish, depending on, we could go into way more detail there. But for the sake of simplicity, the more we're together, we are stronger together. Absolutely. And that's why we need our allies across the dimensions of diversity. Yeah,
it's a great point. Fantastic point. Julie, you've been wonderful. This whole process of reading Lead Like an Ally has been eye-opening for me. I thought I was doing better than I am, and I aspire to do better than I am.
See, that's what a real ally says. I can tell you're being genuine, because if you were to tell me, like, I was already doing this stuff.
Already doing this. Thanks for telling me what I already know, Julie. No, not at all.
I get that a lot, though, too. Like, all right, dude.
Not at all. Yeah.
Thanks for being real.
Yeah, we try to keep it real. We try to keep it real, and that's how we learn. Vinny says, I absolutely love the idea of promoting belonging. We need to start in all levels of organizations, not just at the top. Increasing visibility is key. You do talk about, don't forget the middle managers. It's important at all levels, right? Yeah. They all have different kind of roles in the whole strategy. Vinny's going to be on Wednesday also, which is tomorrow, I think.
Short week.
Wow. Oh my gosh. A week with no Wednesday would be a week with no Vinny, and that would be terrible. So thank you, Julie, for being on. I wanted to give you just a moment, though, to leave us with kind of a final word or whatever you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, well, check out my website. I mean, honestly, it is packed with free resources. So the assessment, the videos, I have my own podcast. So check it out. If you liked the book, it's just a snippet of way more resources that you can use to support. So nextpivotpoint.com. And I post on social every day. So I'm really active on Twitter and LinkedIn in particular. So Next Pivot Point is my handle. There you go, on Twitter. And Julie Kratz, Kratz on LinkedIn. So I'm always posting content there, and I'd love to connect with you and get to know you there as well.
Awesome, man. What's the podcast?
Next Pivot Point. So I keep everything simple. Next Pivot Point. Everything's the same. I did study. Awesome. I got my MBA in marketing, so it would be shameful to not be consistent with my message.
There you go. I love it. This has been great. Thanks everybody for watching and being a part of this movement. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for engaging. Thanks to all the people that participate in the book club for May. Julie, thanks for sending me copies of the book.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I mean, you really have taken the start. I can tell. I have so many more questions for you, actually, about the conversations you've been having since reading it.
Well, yeah. I mean, feel free to ask. I'm pretty open. So Elena says, let's see, we just got a couple more thank yous here. I just I want to share those with you. Thank you, Julie. Women's inclusiveness can impact the inclusiveness of others.
You got it.
Yeah, people really dig it. So thank you, Julie. Appreciate everybody out there. Again, got Vinny on tomorrow, Thursday, and we have the grand finale, the championship of Global Mobility Jeopardy on Friday. That is must-see television for those of you in the States. And yes, I know the people in Europe do not know what Jeopardy is. Thank you for all the comments and feedback. And go check out Lead Like an Ally if you haven't read it already, and let me know how you are leading like an ally. Thanks, Julie, again, and it's wonderful having you. Oh, also forgot, Jane, thanks to Johnson, our sponsor here. Thanks to our sponsor, Johnson Moving and Storage out of Denver, Colorado. Johnson has pivoted to support healthcare supply chains across the country, deliver PPE and even ventilators to hospitals across the U.S. Johnson's has 12 locations across the Western U.S. and recently added Lisa Baronage to grow its international and government businesses. We appreciate their support and welcome them to the show. So thank you so much for that. And with that, we are out. Take care, everybody.